We heard from Agriculture Committee Chairman Debbie Stabenow that there will not be any more votes this evening. A short time ago, the Senate did vote on an amendment dealing with the sugar subsidy, and that failed. Another vote in the Senate on a resolution dealing with sanctions against Iran over its nuclear program. That vote was 99-0, so that was approved. Looking at our primetime schedule tonight on C-SPAN after the House goes out, events related to the Oklahoma tornadoes. Here on C-SPAN 2, Treasury Secretary Jack Lew testified today on the new financial regulations law and also the allegations about the IRS targeting conservative groups. And on C-SPAN 3, a hearing on the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission that's happening at 8 o'clock Eastern Time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to thank the chairwoman of the Agricultural Committee for her great work bringing a bill to the floor today that does a lot of justice to families in Connecticut and across the country that are fighting every single day to be able to put food on the table for their loved ones. The fact is that although people have an impression, Mr. President, of our state as a wealthy one, we have a handful of the poorest cities in the country. And we have tens of thousands of people who have been ravaged by this economy. These nutrition programs funded in the underlying bill are an absolute lifeline to families that have been largely temporarily hit straight across the brow by this devastating recession. In Connecticut, although it's hard to imagine for some people who don't know our state, 11% of the population today are receiving SNAP benefits. 1 out of every 10 people, 1 out of every 10 families in Connecticut right now rely on food stamps to either pay for their food in whole or in part. That's over 400,000 people in Connecticut. People like the 87-year-old retiree from Southbury, Connecticut, who lives in a small, very reasonable condo. She lives on about $1,100 a month. She has gone through a $100,000 home equity line of credit, and her condo fees and her electric bill, because she lives in a small little condo that is heated by electricity alone, basically eat up the entirety of her budget. She couldn't eat without food stamps. She couldn't eat without these benefits. They keep her alive like they do for millions of seniors all across this country. Or on the other end of the age spectrum, another Southbury resident. Southbury, frankly, as you know, Connecticut doesn't have a reputation as a town in need, but they have hundreds of SNAP recipients, just like almost every town across Connecticut. Mrs. Smith is an unemployed mother, and she made a 6-figure salary for decades. And because her husband became disabled, she was the sole breadwinner for her family. The recession hit her just like it's hit hundreds of thousands of others across the country, and she lost her job. And now it's the $300 that she gets a month in SNAP benefits that allows her to be able to feed her kids. She's out there doing everything that we ask. She's looking for a job. She's trying to get back to work, but she's lost her unemployment benefits. They've been exhausted, and now she needs this money in order to live. The fact is that 61% of all SNAP participants are families with children. 33% of all SNAP recipients are families with elderly or disabled members in their family. These are the most vulnerable in our country, and they need a strong SNAP program in this bill. Now, I'm one of a handful of senators who cast a vote yesterday to try to add some money back. But the fact is, the real comparison is not the difference between the underlying bill and that amendment. The real comparison is between the bill that we are debating now and the bill and the budget pending before the House of Representatives today. The House Republicans' budget would absolutely devastate, eviscerate, obliterate the food stamp program, basically rescinding this nation's long-standing commitment to make sure that kids have enough to eat when their families are out of work or have hit hard times. And one of the reasons that Republicans in the House in particular have come so hard, so consistently against food stamps is because they categorize it as an overly generous handout to people who don't need it. Well, Mr. President, this week I'm testing that theory. For this week, because we're debating this bill on the floor of the House, I decided to see what it would be like to live on the average food stamp benefit for people in my state of Connecticut. That average benefit in Connecticut is about $4.80 a day. I'm finding out now 3 days into this that even on this budget for just a week, it is pretty hard to eat enough to just not be hungry. Never mind eat healthy foods. I went to the grocery store, tried to buy some fruit and vegetables for the week, and could barely find anything that fit within that budget. I was able to buy some bananas for 69 cents a pound. I went to go try to get peanut butter, but the only kind of peanut butter you could get was the kind loaded with preservatives because the stuff that's better for you costs a lot more. Over and over again, people who are right now on food stamps are going hungry. Never mind the kind of hunger that they would be confronted with if we further cut this program. They have to make choices every day when feeding their kids. Do I give them enough calories so they will go without hunger pains for the day, or do I try to get them a smaller amount of food that's maybe a little bit better for them? That's what these families have to think about every single day. And I'm not suggesting that doing this budget for a week allows me to walk more than a few steps in their shoes, but it is an education on how little you get out of this benefit today, and it is a caution for this body to stand up to the House of Representatives if the Farm Bill gets to conference to make sure that these cuts don't get any worse. The stories of the senior citizen and the unemployed mother in Southbury, Connecticut, are two of millions of stories all across this country. These are people who have paid their dues, who are playing by the rules, who just need a little bit of help from us in a bad economy. And by no means is this program an overly luxurious handout. Let me tell you from a very brief anecdotal experience that it is pretty hard to go without hunger on $4.80 a day, never mind try to provide a healthy meal for your kids. So, Mr. President, I just wanted to come down to the floor this evening and applaud the efforts of our colleagues who are trying to push through a bill that will get to conference so that we can be in a strong position to defend the nutrition titles of this bill, which are keeping people, kids, the disabled, elderly alive today. There are those of us who would have liked to have seen even more support in this bill for nutrition programs. We failed in that attempt earlier this week, but we are united in the fact that a farm bill that comes out of the House and the Senate and goes to the President's desk has to keep the promise that we have made to generations, to kids across this country. We're going to make sure that you have enough to eat. Thank you, and I yield back the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Mr. President,
Senator from Michigan.
I ask suspension of the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you very much. I ask unanimous consent that on Thursday, May 23rd, following the cloture vote on the Sharita Vaz nomination, and notwithstanding cloture having been invoked, if invoked, the Senate resume legislative session in consideration on S. 954. Further, that the Senate then proceed to vote in relation to the pending Sanders Amendment 965, that there be no second-degree amendments in order to the Sanders Amendment prior to the vote, that the amendment be subject to a 60-vote affirmative vote threshold. Finally, that the time consumed during consideration of 954 count post-closure.
Without objection.
Thank you very much. I now would ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Thank you. And I would suggest the absence of opponents.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
We're not expecting any more votes here in the Senate this evening. The Senate continuing work much of the day on the Farm Bill, which sets agriculture, food stamp, and nutrition programs, sets policies for those programs over the next 5 years. The House is working today on a bill to take the president out of the decision-making process over the Keystone oil pipeline. The White House says the president will veto that bill should it also pass here in the Senate. Right now, the House is voting on amendments to that bill and leading up to a vote on final passage of that Keystone oil pipeline legislation. Earlier today, Jay Carney held the White House briefing. We're going to watch that as we wait for a senator to speak.
That's right, that's right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the White House. Thanks for being here. Before I take your questions, I wanted to mention something that I think is breaking now, as Wolf Blitzer would say, and that is that on Sunday, May 26th, the President will travel to the Oklahoma City area to see firsthand the response to the devastating tornadoes and severe weather that have impacted the area on Sunday night and Monday. He will visit with affected families as well as thank first responders. The President has directed his administration to provide all available resources to support the response led by the Governor and her team. More detail on the President's travel will be released when available. With that, I'll go to your questions. Nedra.
Thank you. Some questions. The first, happy birthday.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you.
Sure, there's no other
29 forever.
First, on the IRS controversy, given that you all have pledged your full cooperation with the investigations on Capitol Hill, what's the White House response to Lois Lerner taking the Fifth Amendment today?
Let me say that, as you heard from the President, immediately after the release of the Independent Inspector General's audit, he is absolutely committed to finding out everything that happened here, finding out who's responsible for the failures, holding them accountable, and ensuring that the IRS takes steps so that this will never happen again. As you know, within the immediate aftermath of the release of that report, Secretary Liu, acting on the President's direction, accepted the resignation of the acting IRS Commissioner, and the President appointed a new acting IRS Commissioner. As you also know, the responsibilities that Secretary Liu has assigned to Danny Werfel in that job through Secretary Liu, the President has rather, through Secretary Liu, include within 30 days, Commissioner Werfel reporting back to the President and to Secretary Liu about progress made in 3 areas. 1, ensuring that staff who acted inappropriately are held accountable. 2, examining and correcting any failures in the system that allowed this behavior to happen. And 3, taking a forward-looking, systemic view of the the agency's organizations. So the President has directed these actions to be taken at the IRS. Danny Werfel, the new acting commissioner, starts today. Today is his first day. That 30-day review begins today. Additionally, we have made clear that we are cooperating with and will continue to cooperate with congressional oversight. That's an important component in a situation like this. And the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, has announced a criminal investigation into this matter. So you see 2 separate branches of government in 3 different areas working to find out what happened, to find out who's responsible for the failures, the clear failures, the inappropriate behavior, the improper conduct, to hold them accountable, and to ensure that procedures are put in place so that it doesn't happen again.
How can you find out what happened if a person who's in Ms. Lerner's position is taking his fifth before Congress?
As far as the President is concerned, and I would assume this is true of Congress, and I am assuming it's true of the Department of Justice, there is a commitment here to get to the bottom of what happened. And I can assure you that the President intends to do that.
Can I talk to you also about the investigation into Benghazi and the report that there are 5 suspects that are under around-the-clock surveillance? Some lawmakers are raising concerns today that the U.S. might lose these suspects as they're being monitored to collect more evidence. Does the White House share that concern?
We have seen the report, and I would refer you, of course, to the FBI on the status of their investigation, which, as you know, is ongoing. What I cannot, while I can't discuss rather the specifics of that ongoing investigation or the internal deliberations related to it, I can say what the President said on the day after those attacks. Quote, "Make no mistake, we will work with the Libyan government to bring to justice the killers who attacked our people." I would also point you to something that the Attorney General recently said, which is that we have made a very substantial progress in that investigation. The President's committed, as he made clear from day one, to two things: finding and bringing to justice those who killed 4 Americans. 2, making sure that the failures that led to the deaths in terms of security of 4 Americans be corrected. And he is, through the FBI investigation that he ordered up, ensuring that the first objective is achieved, and through the process that he instituted through the Secretary of State and the Accountability Review Board, ensuring that the second objective is being achieved. He is also following through on that second objective by calling on Congress, as you heard him say recently, to ensure that there's funding available to upgrade our security at our diplomatic facilities around the world.
Is it his preference or his direction that the investigation and the justice be brought through the civilian court?
I will tell you simply that when we succeed in capturing suspected terrorists who pose a threat to the American people, our other critical national security objective is to maintain a viable authority to keep those individuals behind bars. The strong preference of this administration is to accomplish that through prosecution, either in an Article III court or a reformed military commission. With regards to the disposition of this specific investigation, to the progress being made, I'd have to refer you to the FBI, but that has been our position. Yes, sir.
Jay, happy birthday.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. This is how I chose to spend it.
Lucky you.
You know what? I agree with that sentiment.
On immigration, yesterday the President released a statement saying that the immigration bill that passed out of committee reflected his principles, but that he hoped it would be improved in the amendment process. What improvements is he looking for?
Well, what I think he has said all along is that he had some bottom line principles that were articulated in the proposals that were put forward online and presented to you and the public that have guided what he has said about immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform, throughout this process. And he has said, and he's made clear in that statement again last night, that the measure that passed out of committee last night with a bipartisan vote does reflect those principles. He has also said that he does not expect that in a bipartisan process that is dealing with a matter of the magnitude of comprehensive immigration reform, that he is going to get everything exactly as he would write it. And he doesn't expect that anyone in this process will feel when it's over that he or she has gotten everything that he or she wanted, or that the bill emerges exactly as they would have written it. But he will, of course, as we work with Congress, as this process moves forward, work to have the bill reflect as closely as possible what he believes are important objectives.
Can you be specific about what else he would like in terms of improvement?
Well, I think there are some issues. I mean, I think you know that he supported that he supports an amendment regarding the rights of LGBT individuals. And he made that clear, I think, in answer to a question he took on his trip to Latin America. And this is not limited to that specific issue. Well, I think he's made clear that he supports that and would like to see Congress support that. He's also made clear that he doesn't expect to get everything he wants in this bill. Doesn't mean he won't fight for everything he wants, but he understands that compromise means not getting every single thing that you want. But the process cleared a significant hurdle last night. And in an otherwise busy news environment, it's important to note that a major objective, a major bipartisan objective, has been making significant progress in the Senate as well as the House, and cleared that significant hurdle last night. There's more work to be done, to be sure. We are not there yet, but that is something that the President believes needs to be noted, that the senators responsible for that progress need to be commended for, and that serves as a useful reminder of the fact that we are capable here in Washington, when we focus, when we work together, when we accept that we're not going to get everything we want. If we want to achieve something in a bipartisan way, we can do big things. And we've done it before, and last night's success coming out of committee demonstrates that we can do it again.
One quick follow-up on the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked a lot in the briefing room about Kathy Rumler and how people were informed. Can you say how many people on the senior staff were included when she informed people?
I want to say in response to, I think, Hans and some other questions here, we have endeavored to provide a great deal of information to you very quickly. And in a situation like this, we face a choice that when we have a ton of incoming questions, legitimate questions, you guys are doing your job. As I said in answer to a question from Mark, I believe, last week, this kind of environment, when there's a lot of news stories, there are a lot of legitimate questions out there. It's part of our democracy, and it's a great part of our democracy. And the approach we take is we get the information to you that we have as soon as we can. And we try to get that information to you as quickly as possible and as comprehensively as possible. Now, quickly and comprehensively are not objectives that always meet. And our approach is we get the information we have to you, and as we get more information, we fill in the details. And if it turns out that the information new information we have requires a correction, we do that. That's what I did on Monday when it came to the so-called timeline. So you guys, we have a team here that works really hard at trying to anticipate the questions you're going to ask. The problem is there are a lot of you, and you're good at your jobs and you're smart, and we almost invariably do not anticipate every question that you ask. Sometimes we don't have the answers, and sometimes we need to go back and get them. And but overall in this effort, I think that what the information we provided to you shows is that in response to the notification that people received about the pending completion of an independent Inspector General's review of inappropriate activity by IRS personnel, a decision here was made to wait until that report was finished before any action or any comment was made. Because the cardinal rule here, even though it can be inconvenient from a communications point of view or even a political point of view, is that you don't intervene. You don't prejudge. You don't use the weight of this podium or this building or the presidency to get ahead of the kind of independent investigation that this particular IG audit represents, or in the case of some other matters we've talked here about, criminal investigations that take place under the aegis of the Department of Justice. So,
details. My question was.
And here's what I'm going to tell you. But here, and I just wanted to say that because I think it's important that there's been some legitimate criticisms about how we're handling this, and I say legitimate because I mean it. But we are endeavoring to pursue those two objectives in an environment that really never has existed before in terms of the speed of information flow, the rapidity with which information is conveyed and then released. We are working to get you everything we can as quickly as we can and as comprehensively as we can. And the alternative, of course, is to, and it may be a better approach, you and others can decide, is to then say, look, I can't answer any of these questions until later, and then we can spend all our time trying to get everything that we know that we can find, and then waiting, sometimes hours, days. But the demands of the news environment make that very difficult. So we take the path we've taken and accept that it's got some potholes in it and diversions that aren't always enjoyable. Having said that, in answer to your question, here's what I can tell you. As you know, there was an initial communication to a lower-level person in the White House counsel's office through email, just as part of a number of updates on the status of a number of Inspector General matters that included reference to this Inspector General audit coming to a conclusion. That was, I believe, whatever I said, April 16th, 15th, yeah. Then, but the White House counsel herself did not find out until April 24th. She then notified some members, but not all, some members of senior staff. I can't tell you because she notified some. I can't account for every conversation that might have been had outside the White House mess. I can't tell you how many people knew. What I can tell you is she alerted the Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff, obviously others in her office knew. And from everything we've gathered, and all the evidence shows, whether it was April 16th or April 24th or May 10th when the news broke, our approach to this has been the same, which is that we should not do anything, we should not act on this information until the report is finished, the independent Inspector General's audit is completed. And that's the approach we took. And there's been criticism of that. I think it was the right call, personally. But obviously, others have different opinions. Yes?
Well, we appreciate your respect for the free press. And in that...
Well, it's sincere. I think you know that. But go ahead.
In that spirit, in the President's quest for balance between freedom of the press and prosecution of potential criminal leaks, and in the interest of transparency, would he ask his Justice Department to release the names of all reporters and all news organizations whose phone records have been subpoenaed, who are currently being monitored, or who are in any way being investigated as part of any potential leaks investigation?
It's a very interesting question, and no, seriously, here's the challenge it presents, is that would be the action that you're suggesting any president might take would be to actively involve himself or herself, any president, in an ongoing criminal investigation. And the consequences of doing that are potentially enormous. And that's why it's very difficult when you talk about ongoing activity to suggest that the White House or the President should intervene or take action. What I can tell you is what I told you yesterday, and that is that the President, that I've spoken with the President about this issue, and I've spoken to him about it generally in terms of his views on press freedoms, the First Amendment, the need for journalists to do their jobs, and on the question that I think I had been asked on an earlier day with regard to one of these specific cases, but then extracted so that it did not pertain to a specific case. Should the President's view is that if you were to ask him, should a reporter ever be prosecuted for doing his or her job, the answer in his view is no. And but there's also a balance here. And I think that everyone involved in this, in these cases, who has thought about it and written about it in a thoughtful way, or talked about it on television in a thoughtful way, recognizes that there are real issues here when we talk about our secrets. And as I mentioned the other day, if there were no consequences to divulging highly sensitive classified information, then we might as well not have it. We might as well not have secrets. And so there has to be a mechanism by which we ensure that national security information that is highly sensitive, the divulgence of which could have enormous and detrimental consequences, is protected, and there has to be an enforcement mechanism to that. I know that's this President's view. I believe it's been the view of his predecessors. It is also his view that we need to ensure that reporters are able to conduct investigative journalism freely, and that they are not prosecuted for doing their job. And I think that, again, broadly speaking, not commenting on specific cases because I cannot and should not, that there are procedures in place that deal with this issue, as I understand it, and there should be more done in the President's view, and that's why he supports a media shield law, and that's why he thinks, as I said yesterday, that this conversation is important to have, and that the broader discussion is important to have, and that the questions surrounding these issues are legitimate, and that this is one of these issues that he believes should be discussed.
You've just stated the President's preference that no reporter should be prosecuted for doing their job.
Can I ask unanimous consent to call the quorum be terminated?
The Majority Leader. Without objection.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry I didn't seek recognition. Mr. President, I ask consent that the Senate proceed to H.R. 258.
Clerk will report.
H.R. 258, an act to amend Title 18 United States Code with respect to fraudulent representations about having received military decorations or medals.
If there is no objection to proceeding the measure, without objection.
I ask consent the bill be read a third time, pass, and motion reconsider be laid on the table. Any statements relating to this matter appear in the record as if made.
Without objection.
I ask consent the appointment at the desk appear separately in the record as if made by the chair.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business day, it adjourn until 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, May 23rd, 2013. Following the prayer and the pledge, the morning hour to be deemed expired, the journal proceedings be approved to date. The time for the two leaders be reserved for use later in the day. And that following any leader remarks, Senate be in period. I'm sorry, Mr. President, I was making sure that this is right. So we adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow. Following the prayer and the pledge, the morning hour be deemed expired. Journal proceedings be approved to date. Time for the two leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. Following any leader remarks, the Senate be in a period of morning business until 10:30 a.m. with time equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or the designees. Senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
So there'll be two votes at 10:30. The first vote will be a cloture vote on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals nomination. And the second vote will be on the Sanders Amendment to the Farm Bill. We'll continue to work through more amendments on the Farm Bill tomorrow. Senators will be notified when additional votes are scheduled. There's no further business to come before the Senate. I ask that it adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 9:30 a.m. tomorrow.
Members today continued work on amendments to the 2014 Farm Bill. The legislation sets policies over 5 years for farmer subsidies, crop insurance, and nutrition programs. Work on that continues Thursday. Also today, the Chamber passed a resolution that reaffirms congressional support for implementing sanctions against Iran and continued support for Israel's right to self-defense. You can follow the Senate live here on C-SPAN 2 when members return tomorrow. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew testified earlier today